Welcome to Life Passages, The Soul's Journey. Today our show is entitled Grandma Agnes Pilgrim's River of Life. And this alludes to the long river of life that Grandma lived and how her life was rooted in the depth of ancestral pools like Crater Lake. We could think of the Rogue River that goes from Crater Lake all the way to the sea, and it was the ancestral river of her people. So it's both a show about her arc of life and also about the river of life that sustained her ancestors for so many thousands of years. Mm-hmm. And our guests are Tish McFadden and Thomas Doty, the native storyteller and the author of Upriver to Morning, based on Grandma's teachings. And we'll get to that a little later, how Grandma's life increasingly as she grew older became centered on bringing forth her legacy so that it could impact the world and the people of now, little ones all the way to elders, and going forward with these very core understandings of her tribal people and of her essence teachings really from her wisdom. So thank you for being here with me. And see, there's a picture of all three of you. You go way back, and maybe you could talk about how you all were first connected, you and Grandma, and the three of you.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah.
And this picture here is from Grandma Aggie's 94th birthday party, which was here in Ashland, and she just looks so happy and well. And she just is loved by so many people through all her years of birthday parties and celebrations. And this last year of her life, there were many special celebrations.
Wow, and I was at her 95th birthday,
95th
right
birthday,
by this
and
river.
then Southern Oregon University had a presidential award ceremony for her. Of course, Indigenous Peoples Day, she's there. So in this last year of her life, we had so many occasions to celebrate her, which was just fantastic.
I love that.
I met Aggie back in the 1980s as an archaeologist here in Southern Oregon, and many, many years went by until we met again when I met her in March of 2016, and she had just released her beautiful book, which inspired an education program.
And if it's easy for the control room, we could pull up the image of that book, but we could show it later if need be. And Thomas, how do you? There's her book that she spoke into being. Yes. It's her core teachings, her core message, and a lot about her childhood and on through her life. And I love the title, Wake Up World. That's her message. Come on, world, let's wake up. Let's do things right here and treat our earth right, our waters, each other.
Yes.
And so there is both an audio book that she's spoken to being, and then based on that, I think, is this right, Tom? There was maybe an edited version that became a book?
Yeah, how this happened is Blackstone Publishing contacted us, both Aggie and myself, decided they wanted to do a series of elders, and that was back when they were just doing audio books. The print books were some of their first ones that they published. They
the
just
ones,
started into this.
Grandma's and yours.
Yeah, so Grandma's was the first in that elder series, and mine was the second. And so her book, as well as my book, they're the full text of everything that's on the audio books.
Great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. But I love the audio. That's the version I bought, but I think it just translates so well into the spoken word because it's that living story.
It does. And I first met Aggie back in the 1980s as well.
Wow. What was your connection with her?
My connection was meeting up at a conference right here at SOU on Native American cultures. There were quite a few people speaking. My friend Ursula Le Guin was the keynote.
Oh my
at
goodness.
That. And I told stories at that, and I met Grandma Aggie there. And then we hit it off really well, and we started doing a lot of projects together over the years.
Like
the salmon ceremony, just protecting Native American sites, particularly a rock riding site up above the Rogue River. that was in danger of being quarried. There's some irony, rock
Scary.
writings in a rock quarry. And just a lot of things along the way, and that was sort of continual. And then that really intensified with the salmon ceremony, and even intensified our relationship even more with Tish writing her Upriver in the Morning story.
Right.
And both
Beautiful.
Aggie and I coming on board for that.
Beautiful. So this co-creative arc of all of you, especially you and Grandma, creating the salmon ceremony. We're going to tap into that in a little bit. And since our show title is Grandma Agnes Pilgrim's River of Life, I thought we could now experience Grandmother by the ancestral river, which we now call the Rogue River. Do you know the original name?
Sure.
And Tekelma, tell us.
Kalam.
Kalam.
So inside the word Tekelma, which
Yes.
we sometimes say is Degelma, because there's a
Degelma.
sound in English that we don't make in Tekelma, halfway between a T and a D. Inside that word, Tekelma, Kalam, is the name of the river, Kalam. So that's where we get the name of the people, which means the river's people or the people of the river.
Of that particular river.
Yeah.
That's
So-
beautiful.
Yeah.
And so this is a little footage of Grandmother by her ancestral river, speaking about how the people lived there, and you'll see her even speaking to the river. She always was one to bless water in various forms. So we're calling for the river clip now from the control room. We have a little segment here that is of Grandma by her river, the Rogue River, in the area where her ancestors lived so many thousands of years. And you'll see her by the river.
It was the land of my ancient ones, and it's a beautiful river. And as far as I know, I'm the oldest living of the Tekelma Indians that lived in southern Oregon.
Agnes Pilgrim says the river provided a plentiful life for the Tekelma and Shasta, the Tututni and Athabascan tribes.
They always lived by the water because they didn't have pumps, they didn't have faucets, and so they lived by the water. They had their salmon, they had their deer, they had their berries, they had their fruit. They learned to make pit houses, and it was kind of a little squatty little house. And they would dig a hole in the ground about 18 inches down for their fire pit. Then they had a smoke hole on their top. I pray. Thank you so much for what you do and the life you give. Bless you, bless you, bless you.
I love how, after all of the trauma of the Tekelma Nation, of which Grandma has been the oldest living person until her recent death, that she was able to come back from where they were forced removed to on the way up the coast in Oregon into a very different habitat, very hard to adjust to. That she's been able in her lifetime to come back and be so much by her original river of the people. And perhaps you could say something or many things about the relationship of the Tekelma people, her tribe, and this unique river.
Sure. Well, the Tekelma, the traditional Tekelma view of the world, our view is that the world is the great animal that is the world. And the lifeblood of this great animal is the Rogue River. And the head of the great animal is that big round head of Crater Lake up there near where Rogue River starts. The neck of the great animal, Gwyn Tagabakhdanda, means the nape of the earth's neck. That's Boundary Springs where the river starts. The ribs of the great animal, the center of the great animal, are the two table rocks, also the center of our universe here in the Rogue Valley. The rear end of the great animal is Gold Beach. Sorry, folks might be watching from Gold Beach. Daitagayahumada, which means the rear end of the earth, its tail. And of course the river being the lifeblood of that great animal. And it's also a symbol of our lives. So where the Rogue River starts at Boundary Springs, it just gushes out of the hillside in 5 springs, 5 being our sacred numbers, so that works really nicely. And within a few feet, it's a full-blown river. It's like birth, boom, you're in the world, right? And then like childhood, it is rushing out of control, ripping down through Rogue River Gorge and Tekelma Gorge and all of that. And then as it reaches its middle life along the Table Rocks, it's sometimes fast, sometimes slow, and then as it comes toward the end of its life, where it flows into the Pacific Ocean, it's kind of widened out, some of it's widened out a little, and flows into the ocean. But that's not the end of it, because out over the ocean, the clouds form that move inland over the Cascade Mountains. It brings the rain, brings the snow, feeds the springs, feeds the river. So the lifeblood of the great animal is also a symbol of the cycle of our lives. Right? And that's kind of how it works.
Lovely, yeah. And so maybe that does echo Grandma's journey in a way. As she moved toward the end part of her life, her activity widened and widened and widened and became worldwide. She was one of the 13 indigenous grandmas that were there to bring wisdom teachings and healing to the world. As the oldest of them, she was chosen to be their leader.
Right.
And that's a very wide activity from her little origins. Now, speaking of her little origins, I'd love to have the picture of Grandma as a baby come up so we can see her from the very beginning. And here she is. She's being held by a nurse on the left. She's the baby there. Next over to the right, as you look at the picture, is her mama. Then there are, her auntie is a little further on the right with a darker dress. Other siblings, her brothers and such, the older ones. She was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She was probably 6 out of 9.
So her mother was Evelyn.
Evelyn, her mom.
And then
her aunt, you know her name, right? Frances?
It'd be great aunt.
Great
and
aunt.
that's Frances Johnson, pretty much the last speaker of Takelma. Died in the 1930s. She was over 100 years old.
Wow.
Her Takelma name was Gwisquishan, which means chipmunk face. And
Almost sounds like a nickname.
she was also the one who provided us with nearly all of the Takelma stories that we have.
Oh my gosh, so we need to honor her. She
yeah.
was a saver of their stories and transmitted them so that they were recorded, written down.
Neither my work nor Tish's Upriver to Morning story would have really happened without her talking to Edward Sapir in 1906 on the reservation, and then again to John Harrington here in the Rogue Valley in the 1933, just a year before she
Amazing
died.
to honor these relatives, and particularly the auntie that brought through that knowing of the original stories is so important. And I know Grandma would like that because she was all about present family, elders, ancestors beyond that.
And the big world family, which she
The
became
big
very
world
much a
family.
part of.
And she was a very embracing presence. She included so many different kinds of people in her affections, in her activity of kindliness, not just her own people of the tribe.
It really had no bounds, her open-heartedness.
Say more about that.
Well, I just have seen clips of her with children speaking in schools, and she just speaks to children as though they are just as important, just as aware as any of us. I know she speaks to water that way. She speaks to the trees and to the sky, but to people all over the world. And also her big desire was to pass on these teachings to next generations.
That's
so
right.
it was honoring of both directions, like upriver, downriver, her ancestors,
honor
and
where they
those
came
yet
from.
to come. So it's this beautiful, like kind of a trail with no end, or a river with no end.
Well said. And the rivers in our lives, we see they just keep on flowing. And so may her teachings keep on flowing, and you've been a major part of that, ensuring that they flow on. Do you want to say what your activity is in relation to that?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's just been a wonderful circle for me, speaking of circles, the water cycle, for me going from anthropology into teaching music, coming back around and being a writer, coming back around to being able to do a cultural project based on Agnes Baker Pilgrim's heritage and ancestry. So my cultural anthropology piece tied into writing, tied into passing on her teachings and stories. And then, of course, music is a part of it, because music's a part of both Aggie's life, very important to her and mine.
And I wanted to just touch on that a little bit, because I'm so interested in the arc of her life and how it was very hard when she was growing up. There were signs saying no dogs or Indians allowed in so many establishments, or even in town sometimes. But her father was such a wise and kindly dad that he decided that his children should all learn music, and he told them that once you have music, you'll belong everywhere. People will want you around, and that
Exactly.
became true. And she played so many instruments,
She
right?
played so many instruments and toured around the
And
country.
she sang
And she sang.
on the radio and here and there, right? Performed
yeah.
with her husband or another husband or whatever.
Yeah, music is a really incredible link to our hearts and our minds and our
so
souls
true.
and across cultures. So
Yes.
it's called the universal language
It
for a
is.
good reason. Yeah.
Right.
So.
And other things have intrigued me about her childhood. I know she was 6th out of 9 or something like that, but she was the one when her mother took ill and was really ailing into dying. Aggie was the one who took care of her, despite there were older ones. And she was the one that cooked for the other kids when Mama couldn't anymore. And so I could, in learning about that, I felt this is an inner strength that this soul had that later became a strength for so many, not just her family.
And led her to say so frequently, I am everyone's grandmother.
That's right, she did.
Yeah.
And also then that's very interesting about her caring for her mother, because then her daughter Nadine, one of Aggie's daughters, in turn has cared for Aggie for many
Long
of
time.
a
In
long
such a
time.
dedicated way for
In
so
such
many
a dedicated
years.
way. So that modeling of caring for
Yes.
our parents or grandparents, our
Right.
ancestors, was passed on, and then Aggie also benefited from that,
That's
learning.
so much, and she could bring forth more of her good medicine and good teachings because Nadine was there,
Oh, took
helping her every step of the way.
Every step of the
with
way.
And of course
mobility
that-
things and
That
Yes.
goes back into the traditional culture as well. So in the old time Tacoma villages, the houses in the winter villages were multi-generational houses. You know, there were aunts and uncles and grandparents, and everybody was kind of there together. And then as Aggie grew up in Logston, just at the Siletz Indian Reservation, there were generations around her as well. I mean, her great Aunt Frances was there, and she even remembers John Harrington, the linguist, coming
Wow,
up there
coming
to
to
visit
interview her
Frances,
mom,
yeah,
her
when she
aunt.
was a very young girl.
wow.
And she was witnessing, she was probably the last person alive to witness that last effort of the whole group of anthropologists and linguists that go back into the 1800s in their just undying effort to save as much culture and language materials as they could.
Amazing.
And she witnessed that as a child.
And maybe that inspired her in the
To
whole of
pass
her
it
life to
along,
pass on the
yeah.
teachings that she had received and benefit so many beings that way.
Oh,
It's
yes.
amazing. And then in terms of her early life, I was interested to hear that not only her mother died when she was still a child, but her dad as well.
Yeah.
And that the brothers took on the raising of their sisters, very family-oriented people. There she is. That was a powwow we were all at. I saw you there, and Grandma
I know
was
that
there.
photo.
And
I
you know,
took
she
that photo.
asked Nadine right after that. She's like, they started to do a dance. She said, "Come over here, Nadine. I want you to whirl me around this dance." She danced. Remember?
Of course.
Yeah.
That was a
You go,
great
Grandma.
day.
We love you.
Yeah, Thomas, you captured her spirit in that photo so well.
amazing.
Well, and that eagle fan that she's holding was made by her good friend Vincent Lanford, who's also an elder, and
Wow.
came to her memorial and came to her birthday party.
Right.
Yeah.
So beautiful. This was so recent, wasn't it? Last fall,
Yeah, this was in the spring.
October,
Yeah,
or
yes.
spring
The
was it?
powwow was in the spring.
That's right, spring. That's right. Anyway, we're harking back, talk story, and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, hearing about that her dad died when she was still a child, I had forgotten that. And then how her brothers took on the responsibility of raising their younger sisters, and they told them, you must remember this story. They said they were good fighters and boxers. They said, we're not going to be around to protect you your whole life. We're going to teach you to box. And Grandma became a boxer, a
Yes.
semi-driver, a race car driver,
A bouncer at
a
pub.
bouncer. She was a singer on the radio in different places.
Yeah, imagine.
And she was, I guess, a nurse's assistant, and she worked with children and families in Crescent City area and Yurok people and other people. Almost, and this is Grandma being honored at her celebration of life by all these young kids singing a song they came up with
About salmon.
Salmon.
They were so precious.
And they were so happy to sing it.
Yes.
I know Grandma loved
It was
that.
lovely to have children at that celebration.
Totally. And that's so much, like you said, of her outreach.
Yes.
You know, her two older brothers and her parents, Evelyn and George, they did accompany John Harrington back to the Rogue Valley in 1933 to visit the sites and give a lot of information.
Oh, I'm so
about
glad so they
this.
went back to their ancestral
Aggie
sites
was
along
too
that
young
river.
to go along, so she stayed back at the reservation. But her brothers came, and we have photos of them out at Telemik, which is our salmon ceremony site.
Right.
And George sitting in the story chair out at the falls, which Aggie eventually would sit in.
Well, that leads perfectly to our next clip, which is it starts with the salmon ceremony at its original site from thousands of years ago, and then segues into that very adventure she had, where she steadfastly wanted to sit where her dad had sat and so many chiefs before them for thousands of years on the story chair. It's called the stone chair. So let's just call for that clip now.
The Siletz tribes call this stretch of the Rogue River holy ground. And the ceremony surrounding the first salmon of the year is an ancient sacrament.
I know the history of this land. And I know my people were here, standing where we are. We're standing on their indelible footprints.
At 89, Agnes Pilgrim is the oldest living descendant of the Takelma tribe. She believes for thousands of years, tribes gathered at this very place to welcome the salmon's return.
They did this ceremony before any of them went fishing. All the tribes come together right here, thousands of them. Every tribe here in Southern Oregon.
The practice ended more than 150 years ago when treaties forced all Native American tribes out of the Rogue River Valley. They lost track of the original ceremonial site until this 1933 photo of Agnes Pilgrim's father led them to the centerpiece of the ritual, the stone chair, on property just north of Gold Hill.
My name is Steve Kiesling, and I got into this because I bought the property 12 years ago, before really anybody knew that the salmon ceremony happened here.
By tradition, the tribal leaders sat in the stone chair to evaluate the salmon run and decide when to begin fishing. Today, we call it resource management.
Grandma Aggie said she wanted to sit in the chair, and she told me she wanted to sit in it when she was lying on her back, and she just had her hip or a knee replaced, and the chair is at the base of a Class 4 waterfall. So, thinking, yeah, right, anything you want, Grandma. It was scary because we knew that if she hit the water, that was it. But she was determined to do it. It was magic. You hear the sound of the falls. She was singing in Takelma, and there were drums. It was the first time since 1850, when all these people were marched out of here, that the elder of the Takelma made it to that spot.
So I came today to sit in the same place where my father sat and letting people to know that we are carrying on the culture and the traditions of our people here.
I am so glad we got to see that. What an event.
It's so inspiring.
It is. And for her to sit right where her dad, who we saw in that photo, sat in the 30s. Yeah, and it has that theme that is related to the We Are Here statue. We are here, that sense of owning, the ownership of we are here, we are still here in our ancestral lands. Do you want to share anything with us about that from the Takelma?
Well, the Takelma word for that is emetekleach, which means, the short version is we are here, but the longer version is we are here, we are living in this place, we are breathing right in front of you.
Beautiful. Oh my God, may we embrace that in our lives, be here when we're here. That's powerful.
And the reason we named the sculpture, or I named the sculpture that actually was that we did a series of projects over a few years, including that sculpture, a rock writing exhibit, Talent Museum, bringing the salmon ceremony back. that we really wanted people to realize in this valley that the Native people are still here. We are still here. We invited them to all of these events.
I love
so we
that.
could build kind of a healing bridge between cultures.
Right, and I've been at most of those events, many cinnamon ceremonies, the
And
statue
Indigenous peoples
dedication.
thing,
And there you are with Grandma. You're here with her, and you both are of that heritage, and you're still owning that we are here thing.
right on the Rogue River.
Right, that is. You can't quite see the river too much. It's right behind
It's
you.
right there.
And we are, believe it or not, at 2 minutes. I do want to say one thing
Yes.
of Grandma's teachings, her deep connection with Creator, and how much help she received from Creator. And she would constantly call to Creator to help her. A lot of her challenges were medical challenges,
Yes.
traveling the world as an elder with some impairments and pain.
Mm-hmm.
But what she made clear in a recent segment that I saw on video was, you might hear me call to Creator and think Creator's out there, but no, Creator dwells within us. Find Creator, both vastness but within. It's a good message. Other things you want to leave the viewers with now that we're ready to
Maybe
complete
about,
here?
Tish, how to get more information about Aggie's teachings
Yes,
and such.
okay.
And
More information about Aggie can
Yeah.
be gotten by,
Sure. The Upriver to Morning website, which is uprivertomorning.com, has a lot of information about Agnes Baker Pilgrim.
Beautiful.
As well as some video clips about her, as well as her biography, all kinds of
Oh,
different
wonderful.
things. And it also has the information about the education program, which is
based on her
cultural,
teachings. Huh?
bilingual,
Got to
environmental.
wrap it up. So anything you want to say?
And my website, dotycoyote.com, has a lot about Grandma Aggie, has her own page there, but also has a lot of source materials for
Beautiful.
local Native cultures, and it's all free,
Beautiful.
1,500 pages
Wow,
worth. So.
that's such a treasure trove. And there's agnesbakerpilgrim.com that's being worked on, which will
Yes.
have all of our videos and so much. So people, you can explore further in the vast world of Grandma Agnes Baker Pilgrim and her teachings and her life, and blessings to you. And may you be well as you go forward in your life, and have a deeper and deeper connection with being here in every moment that you're living in, with the earth and the waters that Grandmother so loved to remind us to love and bless and be grateful for. Blessings to you. Be well.